So I was doing a bit of a deep dive back into my archives of content that I've created in the last 5 years. And one thing really stood out to me, and it was that I spent a lot of time talking about tactical elements of content marketing. So the individual tools and outputs that you would use within content marketing. But I haven't spent as much time talking about strategy and the high level and how it all fits together. And most importantly, what benefits should content marketing really provide for your business? So I put together a quick little visual here. I'm going to distill this all into a blog post with a bunch of links in it to individual topics. So if I'm not going to go really in depth on all the stuff here, I really want to keep it high level, not bore you to death. But I will have a resource put together that'll come with this video. And within that, I'll link to things like email marketing best practices or whatever it might be. So if you're watching this and you want to dive further into a specific topic that you see as we go, there will be a resource for that. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to try and not make anyone's eyes glaze over, as my friend Kevin Whelan says. So let me dive into this visual and I'll explain what it all means, and hopefully it's helpful. All right. So what you're seeing here is basically what I refer to as the content marketing flywheel for coworking. So unlike the traditional marketing funnel, which ultimately works to bring in, persuade, and convert people, convert members, kind of that often just dumps them, once they're a customer or a member, then there's not too much attention paid for them or to them. I've sometimes seen marketing funnels where they build in loyalty and things like that. But by nature, coworking is very much reliant on members. Members are very much part of your business model. So I like this flywheel approach a little bit better because it starts with bringing members in, moves into retaining them, and then focuses on activating them to become brand ambassadors who can then help attract more members to your space. So think of it like a flywheel. But basically, throughout this, keep in your mind those three phases: attract, retain, and activate. And with a flywheel, the goal is to get it moving and to keep it moving, and to get it moving and to keep it moving. There are various forces of leverage that you can apply at various phases of this flywheel. So try to keep that in mind as we go through all that. I'm going to keep this as simple and high level as I can, as I said, and I'll do my best to stay out of the weeds. But before we get into this, I just wanted to dive into a few concepts that I'm going to refer to as we talk through this. The first is content tools. So again, a lot of the content that I've been creating in the last couple of years has been more focused on individual use cases and how-tos for each of these content tools, and less so about how they all fit together to achieve the goal of attracting, retaining, and activating members. So these tools will all be used in their own ways throughout each phase of the flywheel. But I just wanted to call them out here so that you can see what they are individually. And then at the end of this video, I've also banked out kind of a sample calendar. So to help you kind of get a look at a year and how these tools will all be used and when and how. So basically your content tools would be video and photography. They can be used across everything from your website to your blog, to your social, to your email. They go through everything. The better your videography and photography, the better your content will be. And this includes interviewing members, as well as getting photos and videos of your locations. Then there's your blog, which breaks down into organic and SEO. So organic is more of that community-oriented content, and SEO is really technical, and the goal is ultimately to capitalize on keywords and get new viewers on your page. And there's social media. Again, these might not all apply to you. You might not want to use them all. You might not need to use them all, depending on what kind of space you operate or what kind of business you have. You might be an operator whose space is focused on creatives, or you might be an operator whose business focuses more on corporate types. So the social platforms that you would use will vary depending on your business. Email marketing. If you see me any of the stuff that I've been putting out lately, you know how complex email marketing is. But as I said in a recent podcast episode, if I had to choose one content marketing tool to use, it would be email marketing. Digital PR. This is a new one. You might not know this, but I spent 10 years in PR, and I've vowed to never go back to it. However, as AI search is taking off, the way information is being sourced is changing. So now AI is looking to other sources like user-generated content, like traditional media, and it's leading on reputation a lot, so how your brand is perceived, to decide what it's going to show. So the better your reputation, various places on the interwebs, the more you're mentioned in user-generated content, and the more you're mentioned in the media, the more favorably you'll be viewed when AI is deciding how to present information to searchers. So that can look like guest articles, which would be, you pitch a guest contribution to a relevant website, and then also traditional media to an extent. If you have news that you want to pitch to media, that works as well. And then this is a bit of a stretch, but there's owned resources like YouTube and podcasting, which are great, but they're definitely a heavy lift and probably a more advanced content tool. So another thing, now that I've said all that, that's important to mention is that this whole demonstration that I'm going to show you, this whole flywheel, I've banked this out to be very blue sky. This is, in my view, what your content marketing flywheel, your content marketing ecosystem would look like if you could do everything and put it all together. That being said, I think this whole concept can be scaled down to meet your bandwidth and your needs and the resources that you have available. So it's also very hypothetical in terms of the fact that, this whole flywheel would need to be customized and tailored and put into a strategy that works for your specific co-working business. So bear with me. This is blue sky, is hypothetical, but it could be scaled down and it would be tailored to your needs. And then just two concepts that I stole from my friend Kevin Whelan that I'll reference throughout this quick demonstration is projects and processes. And so projects would be things that you do every now and then throughout the year. So maybe it's on a quarterly basis, a semi-annual basis, or an annual basis. They wouldn't be the ongoing functions and outputs that you would focus on every single month, but you would have them happening here and there throughout the year. On the other hand, processes are the ongoing activities and outputs that you would have month over month. So they're the recurring things, the standard operating procedures that you would have running in your content ecosystem month over month. So projects every now and then, processes ongoing, repeatable every month. So that being said, coming back to the flywheel, as a reminder, phase one is attract. It's all about building up your brand, getting new leads coming in, and converting new members. And that's kind of where the traditional marketing funnel, in my opinion, falls short. I'll get to that in a second. Once your members are actually members, then there's retention, which there's a lot you can do in terms of content that helps with retention. So this is all about engaging your community, getting feedback that you can use to optimize your operations if you so desire, and ultimately reducing churn. And then the last phase is activate. So that's using community marketing, and Kat Johnson talks a lot about community marketing and its importance, and I couldn't agree more. And also, more importantly, turning your members into ambassadors. So drumming up word of mouth, getting people talking about your space, whether they're your own members, whether they're people in the community, other businesses, and then pushing for referrals as well. So back to what I was talking about with the traditional funnel. As you can see here, the idea is to bring in new members, keep your members there, activate your existing ones to help you bring in more members. So it's a bit of a flywheel and we want to get it moving. The reason why I like this flywheel approach better than the traditional marketing funnel is because the traditional marketing funnel, and there's iterations of this, but it typically focuses on awareness, consideration, conversion, and then spits customers or members at the bottom. It doesn't so much consider what happens to your customers, your members, once they've converted. I mean, I've seen some iterations of this where they work in loyalty and things like that, but it doesn't seem to be as common. So for me, this flywheel just works better. So that being said, like the traditional marketing funnel, there's a lot that you can do in terms of how you use content, both in terms of top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. So I'm not going to dive into all of these in the video. I'll make sure that they're banked out in the resource that I'm going to share with this. But I'm not going to dive into them here just because it'll take an hour and you'll get bored and I'll get tired of hearing myself talk. So within the attract phase, the projects that you're going to want to invest in throughout the year. And by the way, with all of these projects for all of these phases, I didn't put it in this visual, but I will put a kind of recommended cadence that you can think about in the blog article. So I definitely recommend you check that out too. I digress. For projects, there's things like developing shot lists. So when you're creating content, specifically social media content, but any other kind of content for your co-working space, you're going to need to show what's happening on the fly at your space on a daily basis. Part of what sells a co-working space is how lively it is. Part of what's happening, all the programming, all the people that are there, everybody interacting, that vibe, right? It's showing that that's current and that it's ongoing is really important. So you need to be capturing that in real time. And a lot of the time, you'll probably be leaning on your community managers unless you have a centralized marketing team. But a lot of the time you'll be leaning on your community managers for this. And having a shot list, which is, we need photos of this event, we need 5 photos of people talking to each other, whatever it might be, having that shot list banked out for them so that they know what photo and video assets they need to capture on a weekly or a monthly basis. It stops them having to guess, and it stops them having to reinvent the wheel, and it creates consistency in making sure that you're getting what you need every month so that you can fuel your content channels. Taking that to a broader scope, there's videography and photography, which you can do semi-annual or annually. The goal here is to generate a massive amount of photo and video assets that can be used in a ton of different ways. The reason why I say do this semi-annually or annually is because generally it's a little bit costlier of an undertaking, and it's definitely a heavier lift. But that being said, when you do it and you do it right, it'll fuel a lot of what you're going to be working on throughout the rest of the year and throughout the rest of this flywheel. I'll come back to that. But this would be things like space photos and videos for website or for productizing your services. So my friend Kevin Whelan talks a lot about the value of productizing your services, having videos, having photos of every office that you have with great descriptions so that you can allow people to browse those spaces and get up to speed on their own. So that's having good video and photography is incredibly important for that. You can also interview members for use on your blog and on social media, and you can interview them for testimonials. This will come back later more in the activate phase, but just putting it out there for you to think about. Again, digital PR, I'm not going to go back down this rabbit hole, but this could be a project that you embark on maybe quarterly, just to have some sort of external brand mentions happening. There's also website and admin housekeeping. So, just making sure that everything that you have on your website is working well, your forms, all that kind of stuff. Then there's gated content. So if you've created an archive of resources that are, say, local, the best lunch spots, the best coffee shops, or if it's things like everything you need to know about coworking or how to get started with coworking or whatever it might be, you can bundle those up and put them behind an email form to start bringing in new contacts that you can funnel into your email marketing. Again, email marketing updates, you're going to want to make sure that everything you're doing is optimized. So if you're running automations like drip campaigns or re-engagement campaigns, whatever it might be, got to look after that. Managing your email list health. So making sure that you're getting rid of contacts that bounce or anybody who's reported spam or anyone who's inactive, and then tagging and segmenting. Again, I'll drop a resource for this because it's complex and we don't need to dive into it here. Optimizing list building opportunities. I'll also drop a link about this, but this is one part of a much bigger marketing question. But things like if somebody comes into your co-working space and signs onto your Wi-Fi with an email address, is that getting funneled into your email marketing so that you can continue talking to them afterwards? And then sales assets. There's a lot of content that you can repurpose to turn into sales assets that will support your sales team in closing members. So, they can say, hey, you had a question about X. Here's a resource that we created. Hopefully this helps. And then processes. So again, I'm not going to dive into this because I think it would take about half an hour, but I will spell it out in the blog article. But as far as processes for the attract phase, the things you're really going to be leaning on are blog, social media, and email marketing. And like the traditional marketing funnel, you're going to want to do a mix of top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel for each of these. So again, I'll spell this out in the blog post. I won't talk your ear off with it. But you're really going to be looking at blog, social media, and email as your primary tools for attracting members and converting them. So when we talk about top of funnel, it's more about generating awareness. And co-working, as you know, there's a lot of education that goes into it. This is really helping people get a feel for what it is and coming to the realization that your space exists. Then you need some middle of funnel content, which is consideration phase. So what are those things that's going to help them make a decision about why co-working is right for them, why your space is right for them, why they should choose you over a competitor? And then conversion, bottom of funnel, are those things that are really, really targeted, really pointed, mostly product or service focused, mostly helping them understand the ROI, understand the costs, and really getting them that much closer to converting. So you just want to start educating people, get them to consider you, and then ultimately nudge them towards becoming a member. So that's attract. The idea, as I said, bring people in, get them interested, compel them to choose you, and then convert them. And this is where the next phase of the flywheel comes in. And this is what I think is really interesting and also what I think is really important for co-working spaces. So again, The retain phase is all about engaging your community. It's what can you do to make them feel like they're part of something? What levers can you pull? What can you put in place to make them feel more connected to your space and more connected to your community using content so that it makes it that much harder for them to walk away? On a project basis, this could be things like setting up internal email flows. I have links for a lot of these again, so I'll drop these in the blog article in the guide that I'm developing. But that could be things like onboarding sequences and welcome emails, which then come off your community team's plate or are centralized so that it's not every individual location for themselves. It could be engagement surveys. So, 30, 60, 90 days, I'd say probably quarterly, you could send an engagement survey, get feedback from your members about what's going right, what they love, what could use work. And you can actually use that information to optimize your operations if you wanted to. Renewal nudges, if somebody's renewal date is coming up, you can automate an email that says, hey, just a heads up that this is coming. Make sure to renew, whatever it might be. Exit surveys, if somebody leaves, you can ask why in an automated email, get that feedback. Maybe there's learnings that can be had there. I know that's not exactly retention, but it is something that you can use to improve your odds of retention later based on the amalgamated feedback that you get. And again, this is kind of not really retention, but it could be sort of. But win back sequences, if you know why somebody left and it wasn't on bad terms, and there's an opportunity for them to possibly come back. If your email marketing, as I talked about up here, if your email marketing is optimized, if you're tagged and segmented properly, then you can enlist some win back sequences to maybe get those people to come back when the time is right. You can also look at member resources, right? So what are those things that make it easier to use your space? Maybe it's in a portal, maybe it's how-tos, how to use the printer, how to book meeting rooms, whatever it might be, just things that they can tap into to make it easier to use your space and to feel at home there. And then this is another one, event-driven automations. So think of email, but think of it not as traditional marketing. This is more about retention. This is more about making them feel seen and valued and appreciated. So things like birthdays, sign-up anniversaries, like congratulations on year 1, year 2, year 3, whatever it might be, seasonal wishes. These things are really easy wins that can make people feel more valued in your space and make them feel more recognized. The more data you have for this, the more you can customize those communications, and they're really, really easy wins. So those are projects. Those are things that you would set up and then optimize over time to make sure that they're running smoothly and everything's current. As far as processes go, every month, this will be things like member communications. Member communications are things that you can use to keep people in the know and to keep them engaged. So a really good monthly newsletter, not just about news, but about everything that interests them, curated links, whatever it might be to really draw them in. Event updates, things that are happening, housekeeping, whether it's things like office closures or whatever it might be. You can look at social and community building on your blog and social media. So finding ways to celebrate people's wins publicly, to share those internally and externally, spotlighting people. Another thing that I've seen done sometimes, but not that often, which I think is great, is a Slack channel. So setting up a Slack channel where you are pumping engaging content into it, but also allowing people to have a forum where they can connect with one another in space. Again, all these things just make them feel more connected to your business, to your co-working spaces, their location, and to the people that are working with them, and therefore make it harder to leave and boost your retention. And then again, every month, your operations feedback loop. Look at all the data that you got from your members about what they're loving, what they're not loving, whatever it might be, and find ways to action those. And then this is one that, again, heavy lift, might not be feasible, but it's a nice high touch way of doing things. If you want to extend that hospitality experience, which is ultimately what co-working is all about, doing manual outreach to people at milestone moments. So whether it's their anniversary with their spouse, whether it's their dog's birthday, whether it's whatever it might be, the more you know about your members, the more you can outreach to them with content that makes them feel like they're part of the family. So last one here is activate. So you've attracted members, you've brought them in, you've closed them, you've made sure that what you're doing is helping to retain those members. And then now, with everybody happy, you want to activate that membership to create ambassadors for your brands. Again, this one is probably a more high-level marketing, action, but developing and managing a referral incentive program Making sure there's a way to capture whether a lead came from, whether it was a word of mouth, whether it was word of mouth or a referral from a member. Maybe, when they sign up, you ask them that, or when they book a tour, you ask them that. Um, and then having event-driven automations. So after somebody books a meeting room or hosts an event at your space, having a follow-up to say, how was your experience? We'd love a review. Automated testimonials and Google Business Profile solicitation. So you can put some of that marketing on autopilot by sending, 90 days after a member's joined your space, send them an email automatically. If you're loving it, here's a link to Google My Business. We'd really love if you leave us a review. It really helps grow our business. Or you just get testimonials from people that you can use on your website. So those projects, again, those are things that you would do once and optimize over time. And then the processes that you would look at month over month would be things like community marketing. So back in your attract phase, when you were developing community-oriented content, if you're featuring people, if you're featuring local businesses, cross-tag them, follow up with them to get shareability, make sure that, they're reposting or resharing your content to put you in front of your business in front of net new eyeballs, and then sharing testimonials and content. Don't be afraid to do it. So that at a high level is how I see this content marketing flywheel. So phase 1 is attract. Phase 2 is retain. Phase 3 is activate. And then within each of those phases, you have forces of leverage that you can apply to get the flywheel working. So you're bringing people in, you're retaining them, and then you're activating your own membership to help attract new leads while you continue to do the same. And so I know this can feel like a lot to wrap your head around. It's hard to distinguish what projects you would do when and why, and what your ongoing monthly processes would be. So again, I'm going to bank this out in more detail in the blog post. But I do have just a high level sort of calendar for the year that you could check out that would kind of help give you an idea of, what project should you be embarking on each month throughout the year. And then what would your processes be throughout each month of the year. So, December, you might do your video shoot and your shot list development. January, you might do some website updates and update your email processes. And then all the while, your ongoing processes each month would be maybe 4 articles juggling SEO and community content. It might be 12 social media posts. It might be 4 broadcast emails, all of which are, strategically working in that top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel realm. You might do an external email or an external newsletter, an internal newsletter. You might do some proactive event-based communications. You might start doing, you might keep doing the ongoing shareability and community marketing. You might review the data from your surveys. You might do KPI tracking and evaluation. All the while, all of your automated processes are running in the background. So this looks like a massive undertaking, which it is, and there's a lot to it. But what it all distills down to is 1 to 2 projects a month that you do to maintain everything. And then the processes that you undertake every month, which is the content outputs that you would roll out based on based on your strategy. So I know this is a lot. Thank you for bearing with me this long if you've watched it. But I think really the main takeaway here is to understand that there are 3 phases of the flywheel for co-working spaces in terms of content marketing. And then there are forces of leverage that you can apply to each. The goal being to create an ecosystem and to create a flywheel that keeps spinning and keeps spinning. And so I hope this all makes sense. If you have questions, if any of this doesn't make sense, check out the blog article. If you still have questions, feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn or an email at taylor@tailmaker.ca. Always happy to chat. Anyway, hope I didn't make your eyes glaze over. Hope you found this valuable. Thanks for listening.